Making my own unleavened bread has taught me so much about scripture. It's so cool. I have to show you guys. I like to do this daily for my daily bread. You do not have to make your own flour like I'm going to. You can also use whole wheat flour or really any flour that you can afford. For the purposes of this video though, I'm going to show you guys how to make flour because it really adds to the whole thing. These are wheat berries. This is where your flour is going to come from. Notice the name. Berries. These are fruits. When God separates the wheat from the tares, tare look exactly like wheat, except they don't produce any fruit. These are the fruits that make flour. Some people use hand grinders to grind their flour. I have an electric wheat mill just because it's cheaper and I'm not that strong, so inside there's some really sharp blades and they spin really fast and knock the fruits all around and grind them down to a fine flour. Put the lid on tight. Now we're gonna open it and check on the flour to see if it's fine enough. You can tell just by feeling it. So I still feel quite a bit of grit. So we're gonna close it back up and do it again. Now we're gonna check it again. I should also mention when the flour is getting made, this thing gets so hot. If you touch it right after the fact, it might burn you. It's getting smoother, but it's still a little bit grainy. I think if we put it in for 2 more minutes, it'll be smooth. This also gets super messy. Let's check it a third time. Now it's much better. It's more silky. Even after this, we will probably still find some harder pieces. So we need to use a super tiny sifter. This bowl is for what makes it through the sifter. This bowl is for the pieces that need to go back into the grinder. And I view this like the threshing floor. The cool part about making your own flour is that it's alive. So flour that is bought from the store tends to lose some of its nutrients because the wheat has been ground up for a while. So fresh flour is super healthy, even though it's really like honestly kind of painstaking to make. So see how there's a lot of parts that are still not finely milled? They're gonna go into a separate bowl to go back into the grinder. Honestly, the sifting part is the part that takes the longest. And sometimes even after it's sifted, you could still feel some grainy bits. This seems to be good. I don't feel any grains, so we're not gonna re-sift it, but there are times where even after this, I have re-sifted the bowl like 2 to 3 times to make it smooth if I'm making like a cake or something. In the bread itself, I put a dash of sea salt. Only a little bit goes into the bread because we're gonna coat the outside with salt. Then I'm gonna add hot water. I don't really use measurements. I kind of just eyeball it until the dough feels and looks right to me. And then a dash of olive oil, but again, we're gonna coat the outside with olive oil. And obviously you wanna wash your hands before this, but I'm gonna mix it all around with my hands. There's no yeast in this, obviously, because the Pharisees were leavened. They were puffed up. Okay, we're gonna add more water because it can't be dry. One day I was making this and it hit me and I was mind blown. I'm like, wait a second, water and the blood. Because Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane, which has olive trees. So he was crushed for our transgressions. You have to have the water and the blood. And I'm not saying that the blood is literally olive oil, but olive trees have the most medicinal qualities out of really any tree. You could use both the leaf and the olive for multiple things. They could heal so much stuff. I know it's done when it's moist, smooth, but not like sticky. And also it's malleable. Just break it up into like balls. I squish them flat. You could use a rolling pin also, but I like to do it this way because in Exodus, they had to make it quick. So they just squash them down with their hands. And I adore biblical authenticity, so I do it this way. I set my oven to 400. I'm gonna move these over to my baking sheet. And I honestly douse them in olive oil. I know a lot of people are like afraid of fats. Olive oil is so healthy. And a lot of it kind of slides off in the baking process. This is just how I do it, and I do both sides. Back to the analogy that I think exists with the olive oil being the blood. You're covered in the blood. Jesus is the bread of life. If we abide in him, I think that we're supposed to also be bread eventually, like he makes us into bread. Then I use cypress flake sea salt. This comes from the Mediterranean. It's so cool and it tastes so good. It's super salty. The salt flakes themselves are actually like pyramid shaped, or what I believe to be the tabernacle shape. I sprinkle some on each piece. And remember, we have to be salty because we are the salt of the earth. We preserve everything. So the blood, the salt, the water, the fruits of the spirit. There's so much that's so cool about this. I'm gonna pop these in the oven for 7 minutes. I recently told my grandma I really wanted a bread box, and she is the absolute best. I was thinking of the ones that like you pull the door down, the simple ones. She got me this giant, super cool one. And as I was building it, I was like, wait a second. Am I like building an ark for the bread? Because why is it made of acacia wood and it has the sohar, the light window that Noah builds into the ark? And then I got so excited because I started thinking about like how Jesus is the carpenter and how he's our protection. And the ark is made of wood. The Ark of the Covenant is made of wood. The basket that Moses was put in as a baby is made of wood. Also, I forgot, but the Ark of the Covenant, there's the manna inside, so the bread from heaven, and we know that Jesus is now the bread from heaven. So here are my finished breads, and probably my favorite TJ Maxx find ever was I found these Star of Bethlehem wine glasses, so of course I had to get them. And I'm gonna pour some of my wine. What I typically do is say the Lord's Prayer, and then I'll say his body broken for our transgressions, break the piece of bread and eat it, and then his blood poured out for our iniquities, and then drink the wine. The whole thing with this is that God literally turns the bread into Jesus's flesh and the wine into his blood, because if we don't eat his flesh and drink his blood, we're not abiding in him. I'm not saying this in like some kind of ritualistic way. I personally do this because I feel like I spend time with God when I do this. I know there's going to be tons of people saying I'm like a legalist and all of this nonsense. I'm sharing this because I have a lot of, especially younger people, but just people in general that are quiet but are hungry for like the ancient ways of doing things and are hungry for knowing God. So I'm just sharing this, hoping that it helps somebody in their walk. I just love finding ways to spend time with God, and I know that this has to be powerful because a lot of times when I sit down to do this with my piece of bread and my wine and I start saying the prayer, I feel like I'm being spiritually attacked. Like randomly, all of these distractions start happening without fail almost every single time. So I know that it has to be powerful in the spiritual realm. And fun fact, I learned that the word thank you in Greek is Eucharisto, something like that. My pronunciation's probably terrible, but it's spelled exactly like Eucharist. So when we partake in the Eucharist, we're giving thanks to God. And I think that's beautiful. I had no idea that it was built into the language in that way. I love you guys. Let me know if you do anything like this or if you picked up on scripture connections that I didn't in this process.